I'm Jim Copeland, and I'm the district director for District 2, and that includes Hockley, Lamb, and Cochran County. And up here we have our new director, James Powell. He's a crop consultant. A lot of you probably know James. He's just on the board this year, and we're sure glad to have him. He's going to bring a lot of knowledge to our board. I know he will. And James Mitchell, Jim Cartwright, is our manager and our leader. And I know you've heard a lot of rumors. I've heard a lot. But you're going to get the real deal out of James and these guys up here. So, James
And we'll call on you for some answers too. You'll get the real scoop from our board and the staff that are here today. I just want to say right off the bat, we do welcome each of you. We're glad you're here. We feel like our process has worked and been successful. We've got a lot of new rules we need to look at. We've put them out there with a short time frame, and it got people's attention, and it's getting feedback, and that's what we want. What I'm saying is this is round one. This is the first step in a process. Your testimony here today goes into a management plan and a set of rules that will follow that management plan. But when we do give notice of the hearing, like I say, it's a 20-day required, and we'll give the minimum 20. If we can, we'll give a few more days. But that is a comment period once again. And that's your second comment period. This first comment period ends April 1st at 5 o'clock. Then in the next month or so, we will have another comment period with the final draft of the rules. After the 2 hearings, then the board goes back one more time and looks at the proposal plus what has come in at the hearings before coming out with a final set of rules. I want to say at the outset, there is a purpose for groundwater conservation districts. Again, the High Plains is the oldest district, will be 60 years old in September, still the largest in the state. But we provide for the conservation, preservation, recharging, and prevention of waste of groundwater. It's important to remember we're still the state's preferred method of groundwater management. And on the bottom line in blue, the state of Texas expects local groundwater conservation districts to manage and conserve groundwater. Implementing the desired future conditions. What decisions have been made thus far? The Board of Directors of the High Plains District has selected a DFC for the district. We've worked with others in GMA 1 and GMA 2. I see Jason Coleman here from the South Plains District. There may be other, and a board member, there may be other districts represented here, but we've worked on establishing desired future conditions. And you can read the slide. I won't read it to you necessarily, but we've got the DFC in place, 50-50. The amendment to the rules that is now in front of you is our quickest and best way to get on the 50-50 curve for the High Plains District. Again, 50-50 management goal, we would like to have 50% of our saturated thickness remaining January 1st of 2060. That was in place January 1st of 2010. Allowable production rate means the amount of groundwater that wells or well systems are authorized to produce from the Ogallala Aquifer during each calendar year, beginning January 1st, 2012. And let me go ahead and say this is Ogallala only. There will be a set of rules, management plan and rules to follow in the next year or two on the DOCM, the Santa Rosa. We are required to regulate it as well. It just will come behind this set of rules for the Ogallala. And beginning on January 1st, 2012, the allowable production rate for all wells and well systems within the district is 1 1/4 acre feet per contiguous controlled acre per year. with some specifications, as you can see there. That amounts to 15 inches a year per acre. A slide or two on allowable production rate. Obviously, that is a section of contiguous controlled acres. That's pretty simple. That 640 acres has 1¼ feet, 15 inches per year. Another example would be on a center pivot system that took the whole section, and we know that's, you got a lot of quarter milers out there, we understand that. That brings this up because you're still getting the 1¼ off the whole square to about 1.6 feet or 19 inches a year. This just gives an example of if a quarter's out, how much that puts on the 3/4. Contiguous controlled acre means a surface acre of land overlying the Ogallala Aquifer upon which a well is located, and each additional acre of land overlying the Ogallala Aquifer that is A, owned in fee by the same person or for which the person has a legal right of possession or the right to produce groundwater. These obviously are contiguous controlled acres. Two pieces of land side by side, maybe a fence row or a turn row between them, but they're contiguous and you operate both. Have a road easement that separates those two pieces of land. They still are contiguous pieces of land. These two obviously are not. There's a piece down here in the bottom, there's a piece up there, and there's a white area in between someone else owns. Those are not contiguous controlled acres. Those are not contiguous controlled acres. Rule 3 relates to illegal drilling and operation of wells. You can see that quicker than I can read it. See what that says. But these we felt like are the important parts of the rules you need to be aware of, and I think we will hear from your testimony in a minute. Most of you are already. How it relates to the implementation of the 50-50 management goal, that's Rule 5, establishes a process to implement the management goal of 50-50. Rule 5 applies to all new and existing wells that withdraw water from the Ogallala Aquifer, with the exception of exempt wells for domestic livestock and poultry. Also, Rule 5.3 establishes an effective date of January 1st, 2012 for well owners to limit production from the well or well system to the allowable production rate of 1¼ foot per acre per contiguous controlled acre. Now, Rule 5.4 allows municipalities providing public water service and who have prohibited drilling within their city limits of new water wells within their boundaries to count each acre within its boundary as a contiguous controlled acre when determining the annual amount of groundwater that can be produced from an existing public supply well. And let me just assure you, we feel like our wording's correct, but we have heard enough comments over the last 2-3 weeks that I will tell you this right now. We will make sure that that wording is clear, and if it's unclear now, we will clear it up. Our legal people are aware of this. We have met, and haven't met yet, but I've talked with several city managers. I met with 2 or 3 individually. These cities, agriculture, industry, XL Power, are all going to have the same 1¼ inch per acre. Lubbock is not getting a double dip in Bailey County. Everyone is on the same footing, equal 1¼ foot. Power generation, municipal, agriculture, industry. So we are reevaluating the way that rule is stated to make it more clear, because that will answer your questions and it's a benefit to the cities around our region. The next rule requires the district to designate high decline areas based upon the average of the most recent 5 years of our water level observation well network. Then Rule 5.11 requires the board to designate by resolution no later than May 31st of each year and the area within the district as a high decline area. Over about a 3-year period, this gets to where 2 foot and above is high decline. But initially, anything that's 4 foot and more is considered high decline. I think Mr. Mulligan will explain to you that we've had some 70-foot declines in wells in the last 5 to 7 years. And that's pretty heavy decline. We do have allowance for phased-in implementation, with the first designations made in 2011 to include those areas which have an average annual decline equal or greater than 4 feet. And then beginning May 31st, 2013, those areas with average annual changes greater or equal to 2 feet will be designated high decline. I want to be sure and stress that. You need to understand that. We will also make sure, we don't have printed copies of this presentation today, but they'll be on our website where you can access it. Rule 5.13 establishes that metering and reporting requirements contained in Rules 5.14 and 5.15 apply to all non-exempt wells, existing or new, located in a high decline area. Where the decline's the highest, we're going to require meters first and foremost. You can read the rest of that as I discuss some of it. There's some dates in there. And a meter can be used on multiple wells in a system. We had a question on that in Hereford this morning. You can put a meter on a well, or you can put it on a pivot with 4 or 5 wells going into it. We want it to be the simplest way for you to report water use. If you've got 2 pivots on a piece of land, and you can combine the numbers on that for us, that's fine. We want to make it as simple for you and us as we can possibly do. We are allowing the first 2 years alternate way of, we're studying alternate ways of measuring groundwater use. I will be out with that hopefully before September 1st, but I think one of the systems that you could use, and mentioned at Hereford, know your flow times some electric, work with your electric bill. But we're going to have a list out of approved meters and alternate methods. Requirements for production reports, that's what we've been talking about. That gives you some of the dates there. In this annual report, owners and operators are required to identify the number of contiguous controlled acres owned or controlled for the right to produce groundwater. That gives you the dates meters can be read between December 15th and January 15th. The deadline for submission to the district, March 1 each year. Rule 5.16, administrative rule, establishing the district's responsibility to notify property owners and permit holders of the designation of high decline areas. Bill Mulligan, hydrologist for the High Plains District, professional geoscientist, will explain the.
If you look at this map, and this trend right across in through here, starting over in Castro, and in Palmer and Bailey, and then coming across in Lamb and Castro and down into Hale, and then finally into Floyd. You'll see a trend there within the district were the average annual declines over the last 5 years. That's counting the good years where we've got higher than normal precipitation and the lower than normal precipitation. Averaging those out, where the average annual declines have been as high as from 5 to 7 feet per year. On the right is another way that we looked at the data, and that's the cumulative decline over the last 10 years. And so it's just a different way of looking at the declines. But what you see is, you see a very similar trend, and spatially, but of course the magnitude is different. And in fact, if you had the really detailed map, you would see that there are areas where there's been as much as 70 feet of decline in the water tables over the last 10 years. So what the board ultimately, we looked at 1 year, we looked at 3 year, we looked at all these different ways of looking at the data, and it looked to be to the board when they're deciding on how they're going to lay out these initial draft rules, is that to look at a 5-year average. So it sort of smooths the highs and the lows out, looking at a 5-year average. So every year we're going to move the data set forward. So for example, this is last year's map. It was from 2006 to 2010. The map that the board is scheduled to consider at their May board meeting will be from 2007 to 2011. So it's going to be a 5-year moving average, always moving forward. Good. Why? So why is that important? What is the meaning of that data set? Well, the water table, the water level elevations is a very core, fundamental data set for implementing these rules. And one of the things that is described in these rules is what's called an allowable decline rate. And what an allowable decline rate is simply, the district has a 50-50 management goal, and everything in this rule package is designed to fit together to achieve a goal of having 50% of the aquifer left in 50 years. Well, in order to do that, one of the elements that's put in these rules is the establishment of an allowable decline rate. And so what we're going to do is, by December 31st of 2015, and we're doing some studies right now to help us better understand the base of the aquifer. And so what we're looking at is we will generate a saturated thickness map of the aquifer, a new saturated thickness map on or before December 31st of 2015. And then we will take that map, it will be a very detailed map, but then on the basis of that map, we'll calculate on a county by county basis the average saturated thickness of the overall aquifer. So for some counties, that value may be as high as 125 or 130 feet of average saturated thickness, and in other counties it may be as low as 30 or 40 feet of average saturated thickness. That number will then drive what your allowable decline rate is for everyone that has property within that county. So the way the math works out is, if you have 75 feet or less, down to nothing, but if you have 75 feet or less of average saturated thickness for that county, then the allowable decline rate will be 1 foot per year. If you have more than 75 feet, then it will be 1.4% times whatever that average saturated thickness is. So if you have 100 feet of saturated thickness, then you would have 1.4 feet of allowable decline rate per year for that county. And those numbers would then be continually updated. The first year that the allowable decline rate goes into effect, this is really important, this part of the rules does not become effective until 2016, until January the 1st of 2016. And why is that important? Well, starting in 2016, if you're exceeding the allowable decline rate, then there's another provision in the rules that will, again, it is focused on helping the district to achieve its 50-year goal of having 50% of the aquifer left. If you're in an area that's in a high decline area that is exceeding the allowable decline rate, then for all the properties that are in whole or in part inside of those high decline areas, there will be a 5% reduction each year on the 1.25 feet of water until you're within the allowable decline rate. Well, that's not it's important for you to understand that's not 5% of the whole, of the beginning number every year, it's 5% of what's remaining every year. So that number will go down every year through time until you get on get within the allowable decline rate.
We'll probably come back to some of that discussion with your other comments and questions. Basically, these 5.5 deal with the meters and the meter issues. Rule 7, water well permits. Rule 7.1 clarifies the definition of wells that are exempt from district permit requirements. Rule 7.2 establishes requirements for the registration of new and existing exempt wells with a registration deadline of January 1st, 2012. And Rule 7.3 requires that all new and existing exempt wells, except those under Rule 7.1C and 1, all new wells or well systems for which a permit is required under 7.4 and all replacement wells drilled in accordance with Rule 4.4 to be equipped with a meter prior to operating the well or well system. The meter must be installed by the January 1, 2012 deadline. And we'll get into more discussion of that, I'm sure, in a moment. Rule 7.9 states that the designation of high decline areas, that after designation of high decline areas, all owners and operators of unpermitted pre-district wells shall apply for a permit to operate the well. These applications will be processed in the same manner as regular permits, with the exception that minimum well spacing requirements are not applicable, and there will be some other data that is not provided on a pre-district well. But all wells in the district do fall under these rules, and that's the point we're trying to make there. Take-home points for today, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot more in the next couple of hours. We feel like it's very important to take care of our resource, to not mine it as bad and badly as we have been doing in the past, but to ensure that we've got water resources available for future generations, future agriculture, future municipal development, future industry. We've got to have water out here to survive. And we think using it up and dropping off the edge to dry land overnight is not the most prudent use of our resource. And we think that by expanding our years of keeping the water, your water goes up in value. In the long haul, your land prices will go up. You will have a larger window of opportunity for scientific and technological development. And you'll also expand the window of opportunity for economic benefit to all the cities and towns of this district. In 2005, Texas law was revised to require groundwater conservation districts to adopt the DFCs. We've already said that. So all of proposed amendments to these rules are focusing on achieving the desired future condition that's been set by the High Plains District, the Ogallala Aquifer, of 50-50, 50% left in 50 years. Here is a current timeline for rural development process starting in February, but it goes back much beyond 2011. This board has dealt with DFCs and these related issues for several years. Worked hard to establish a fair and equitable desired future condition as required by state law. We feel like we have accomplished that. And these are some of the dates that we have reached and are coming in the future. The timeline for rural development process, these dates are scattered, a lot of them through the rules, but this is a central point you can go to and see. Continuing from May 31 right on down through 2014 and following, there are some more. We encourage you to see these on the website, and we wind up there in January 1st of 2016. Make your comments, give us your testimony, your suggestions, your ideas. Written comments will be accepted here today or until 5 on April 1st. We've got a number of comments, probably at this point double or a little over what we had in Hereford this morning. So we will be holding very strictly to 3 minutes. If you're representing a group that selected you to be the spokesman, tell that up front. We give you a little more time. I think that's pretty self-evident, but we do encourage you to stay informed through our website, through the cross-section. And with that, I think we're ready to start.